What's the job people romanticize but in reality is miserable? Flight attendant. I have a friend who is a senior attendant with United, and the stories she tells are so stunning. I have to check her eyes sometimes to see if she's having some kind of walk-in nightmare. She loves her job, she's tiny, looks about 20 years old, has the sweetest face, so people have no idea that when they become aggressive or rude or demanding with her, she is essentially a black belt at dealing with total schmucks. But no matter what, the work is exhausting. But the benefits are incredible. Free travel. It takes a very specific type. Being a flight attendant, I think, is like being a waitress on crack, sometimes literally. Story 2. Therapist. Oh, you just talk and listen all day. I wish I got paid to talk all day. Reality, real-time listening closely while conjuring the best therapeutic technique to help this specific client. Also remembering a ton of people's stories and nuances of specific relationships. Also trying to prevent ending one's life. Mandated reporting. Also, therapy doesn't give homeless people homes. Also, back-to-back major mood shifts between clients. You are still recovering from a trauma dump while the next client is celebrating a major success. Also, tons of secondary trauma exposure. Also, losing clients to coding and ending their own life darn sucks. Story 3. Park ranger. People imagine taking hikes in the woods and living in a cabin. In reality, you're getting paid close to minimum wage, selling tickets at the entrance or doing customer service type stuff at the ranger station. Also, you're probably going to be let go at the end of the season. You have to dedicate years of your life as a temporary employee doing seasonal work to even get the chance to apply for a permanent position. If you get lucky enough to land one of those, there are still a good chance a new president will get elected and lay off all the recent hires. Story 4. Baker. People have a vision of a young woman in a cute apron with a little boutique bakery. My whole family is made of bakers. My father is by far the hardest worker I've ever met, and he could only handle the job for a few years at a time before needing to take a break for a few years. You have to get up at obscene hours to make sure the breakfast goods are fresh every day. The machines in the back are brutally hot and extremely dangerous. Some will just maim you while the others can be fatal, and that's just the off-season. During the holidays, it's a madhouse. I didn't see my dad from October to January during the years he was baking. Being the child of a baker was great though, bottomless vats of chocolate and racks of cookies. Story 5. Veterinarian comes to mind. For one thing, while you spend your day working with animals, many of those animals are suffering and you won't be able to save them all. You like dogs? How about a job where you spend a significant portion of your time watching them pass away? Also, apparently, many pet owners suck. Some of them are just incredibly stressed out because they're losing their beloved pet and take it out on you, and others choose to let their pets pass away of a curable illness instead of paying for a procedure. Story 6. This is a borderline case, as the job is portrayed negatively as often as it is positively, but there's still this archetype of reporters as intrepid truth-tellers who rifle through the bins of corrupt politicians and expose injustice wherever they find it. Now, those kinds of reporters do still exist, but there are way fewer of them now. In the click economy, it can be really hard for editors to support investigative journalism. Those stories take a long time, carry legal risks only the biggest media companies can afford, and will usually get a fraction of the views compared to some clickbait schlock about a minor celebrity. Your average journalist is trapped writing about celebrity gossip or doctors need anti-aging trick they don't want you to know about, and hate themselves for it. It's a deeply cynical and depressing work environment. Most clickbait journalists started off wanting to be that intrepid reporter speaking truth to power. Story 7. Anything, when done for 40+ hours a week, endlessly with an endless stream of interchangeable customers. Our brains were not selected for anonymous, disengaged toil with no clear, achievable goals, except ceaseless repetition for accumulation of an abstract quantity, money. We love meaningful work, but that's to say we want projects with concrete ends for ourselves or for people we know and we like. That industrial and post-industrial economies replace that with an unending scale to mass produce for strangers makes everything feel deadening and pointless. That's basically what Marx was trying to articulate with the notion of quote-unquote alienated labor. Our work life is a stranger to us. Story 8. Librarian. People think we read all the time. No. Public librarianship means dealing with people, and people can be awful. Oh, most of the people are decent, I'd say 99%, but the rest of them? Oh boy. Some just give us good stories, but others are challenging. I've been pestered, threatened with a lawsuit for not giving him a library card, and faced a death threat. For all that, I like my job and I love the people I work with. I sure didn't sit around reading all day, though. Story 9. The allure of a large paycheck draws many into IT, a belief rooted in the high executive and managerial salaries. However, this pay often comes at the cost of extreme exhaustion. The daily reality for most IT professionals is a relentless cycle of fixing broken software, mapping new processes, and creating reports. This work demands intense, focused effort and constant self-education. The schedule is frequently miserable, with uncompensated overtime becoming the norm because management routinely underestimates the hours needed, often failing to account for necessary testing and sudden, unexpected problems. It is a lonely profession requiring absolute silence and isolation to dedicate all mental energy to solving a complex issue that may have materialized just moments before. Story 10. Internal tech support is the worst. You get no respect from the customers and no respect from your coworkers who think you rank below absolutely every other role. You need to know something about every piece of software. In my organization, there were hundreds of pieces of software, and we were expected to troubleshoot it all. Things are constantly changing. No one documents their software or troubleshooting processes and just expects you to deal with it. Then there's a business who, when things are running well, think you do nothing all day, and there are too many of you, and you should be fired. And when things do break down, they think you're incompetent and too slow to get things back up and running, and you should be fired. Story 11. Working in a bakery. It's not cute, whimsical, or cozy. It's being up before the sun every day, regularly burning your arms and hands, everything being sticky, taking your lunch break at 8:30 in the morning, and constantly trying to find new ways to circumvent fruit flies and disco rice. I've worked in corporate places that had fruit fly quotas, like a predetermined amount of them that were legally permitted to exist on site, and fully caked/covered fly strips hanging directly over icing stations in the back. Disgusting. Story 12. I'll name 2 I have and 1 I've done. Nightclub server/bottle girl. The money can be great, yes, but it's literally just preschool level customer service with an extremely high standard of beauty. I say preschool because I'm so tired of grown men not keeping their hands to themselves in multiple ways. It's not partying all the time and loving and partying at all. I have like one coworker who thinks this job is fun and it's their first job ever. They have a degree in hospitality, if I remember correctly. Low-level manager, retail and fast food. Any low-level manager, including retail and fast food, I won't say restaurant or nightclub manager because those paths are known to be scams by those in the industry. Retail and fast food managers just seem like they're getting solid money for barely any more work, less in some cases. I don't know about other people, but I've been delegated tasks I never should have been doing in my role a million times. So anyway, it's just not actually good money 99% of the time. It's like $1 to $4 extra. Sometimes it's also 3 times the work and $1 simple dollar. I'm an assistant manager at one of my jobs right now, and the only difference between me and my boss is $1 and 3 times the work. Insane. They say if I work hard, I can have that job in whatever amount of time. I don't want it. Going on a tangent here, but if it was salary plus mostly work from home, meaning I get that work done in half the time, yes, but it's not. They want me there 6 days a week, overtime, training employees, and running a whole establishment alone for $20 an hour in California. Traveling to corporate meetings at least once a year? Are you crazy? My job is technically involving retail without doxing myself. I'm not really selling anything. They come, contracts are signed, when they don't need it anymore, they leave and are hopefully replaced. Manager and computer stuff, blah blah blah, boring stuff. Dental assisting, the job I've done. Dental assisting is a horrible job for multiple reasons, but I'll keep it short. Most just think it's easy and pays good. The pay is nowhere near as good as people think. Pay starts below the general minimum wage because small businesses are allowed to follow different laws, even in California. Almost all dental offices are considered small businesses. When McDonald's paid $16, DA paid like $14.59. People who have crazy wages earned it, and their license might look like an alphabet: registered DA, expanded functions, level 2. Most DAs do not retire due to age, and they retire due to early spine surgery and/or back issues. Every teacher I had in DA school had spine surgery. Many healthcare jobs are physically taxing in unimaginable ways, but dental assisting was hurting my back at 18 years old. Just saying, it took until 24 for me to start feeling the mild tingling of future back problems as a customer service employee. That's all I'll say for now. Story 13. Software engineer. Most of what we see in the media are fun tech campuses, free food, flexible schedules, and young, competent peers. That's like 10% of the industry. The rest of it is filled with tight deadlines, incompetent people, and questioning why you ever went into the field. Not to mention, most positions now require on-call duty every few weeks, depending on the employer. You might be expected to have your work laptop with you at all times and respond within a few minutes to any page. Want to take a nice relaxing shower? See a movie, or a play, or a concert? Have relations with your partner? The almighty pager disagrees, and hopefully it's not 3 a.m. when you're called on to have your best brain available to troubleshoot an extremely complex interaction between multiple internal teams and external services while your boss and your external clients look over your shoulder. Then quickly write up a concise summary with root cause analysis and multiple proposals to fix the problem, which will be filed away in the backlog work memory hole because the new features always take precedence. Software used to be a great career, not anymore. Story 14. Hairstylist, standing on your feet for 8 or more hours a day while also having to perform cut/color services while simultaneously being an unlicensed therapist while all your clients trauma dump on you. The disrespect, so many people look down on this trade as if it's just easy work or it's not even a real profession, but a hobby. Don't even get me started on the pay. Unless you have your own salon, which comes with its own stressors, running a business, you will barely make any money unless you're doing it for 10 or more years and have a full clientele. And even then, you're still not going to really make the big bucks unless you work full-time, and if you do, good luck with all the physical therapy and medical bills that will come along doing hair for 10 or more years full-time. Your shoulders, your back, and your neck are all going to be trash. Varicose veins, foot problems, that can go on. I can't wait to get out of this profession. But yeah, it is such an easy job. All we do is talk and play with hair all day. Story 15. Curator, underpaid, overworked, and your funding streams get cut year upon year while your visitors expect bigger and bigger exhibitions. Working with the objects and artifacts is cool, but unless you're in a big national museum, chances are your collection stores are old, cold, not built for purpose, and usually also either damp, moldy, or something somewhere is falling to pieces. There's never enough boxes and no money to buy any, but people turn up weekly and get angry when you can't take their donations because of lack of space. If you're a social history museum, everything feels like it has asbestos in it. The hair dryers, the old wallpapers, the asbestos nightgowns, the talcum powder and the old makeup compacts, the old tubes of toothpaste. Even your local museum folks, they may only be small with basic exhibitions, but they're trying their best with tiny budgets, and you never know how long they'll be around before the local council gets rid of them because culture is so underfunded, in the UK at least. Story 16. I'm a librarian, so often I have parents come up to me, sometimes church friends of my grandmother, sometimes patrons, and ask if I can talk to their quiet, bookish teenager about becoming a librarian. And I say, every time, I'm happy to talk to them, but it won't be a glowing, romantic talk. I'll tell them it's a job that is largely customer service, quite often involving speaking in front of a crowd, and regularly includes essay, par from the course in public libraries where you're often dealing with homeless and mentally ill patrons. I'll tell them reading widely in my spare time for the sake of readers as advisory actually ended my love of reading, and now, 5 years out of the public library system, I'm finally able to read for joy again. I'll tell them you have to get an expensive certification, but there aren't enough jobs. I was in the casual pool for 4 years before I found a full-time job. I'll tell them that I had a library patron turned stalker, that I once found someone partway through an attempt, and years later, I still get this sick feeling every time I see a student sleeping at a desk because that's how we found her. I enjoy my job, but it isn't the natural fit for the nervous, bookish, quiet people we were sold. Story 17. Kindergarten teacher. My mom is now retired, but she was one for over 40 years. She adores kids, but the stress she was being put through every day was not the healthiest. We live in Romania, and over here you can have up to 30 kids in a class. The noise was unbearable every time I called her. The younger, the more difficult to control them. The darn viruses they would bring to kindergarten from early fall to late spring. The insane, entitled parents who believed only their child existed. The awkward conversations with said parents when their beloved perfect angel would bite and beat up other kids, just nonstop mayhem. The worst part is that if one of the 30 kids trips and hurts themselves, you can go to jail because they were in your care. It's impossible to have your eyes on all of them at the same time during playtime. Yeah, no. Sure, it's rewarding, especially when she sees some of the kids who were in her class doing great in life and knowing she helped shape them as little children, but I would never, ever do it. I think part of why I'm child-free was hearing all the stories of how some kids are by nature difficult and no education in the world can fix them, along with all of the parenthood hardships. Story 18. I've owned a business for 16 years. I used my knowledge and experience to start consulting several years ago to get people started in my line of work. A lot of people dream of starting and owning their own business. They dream of being their own boss, setting their own hours, and answering emails on the beach drinking Bahama Mamas. You aren't your own boss. Your clients and the government are your bosses, and you no longer have one, but hundreds of bosses. You can set your own hours, as long as those hours include 24/7, 365. You're never not working or have a pile of things to do that you wake up thinking about at 3 a.m. If you do take a day off, nobody is there to pick up the slack. When you get back to work, you have to do all the things that weren't done on the day of. I actually do go to different places to answer emails, but it's usually coffee shops in the area. We have a huge destination resort in town that has a giant fireplace that stays lit all winter that I'll occasionally go sit in front of to work. But don't think running a successful business is a pathway to easy town. It's an insane amount of work. I'd say 75% of the people who hire me as a consultant don't make it to the end of the year. Some give up after a couple of months, and no, I will not refund your money because you changed your mind. Story 19. Anything creative like graphic designer, video editor, animator, you turn your passion into a job and all of a sudden the joy of creating is sucked out of you slowly. The worst part is, if you work for someone, not freelance, you're beholden to their visual identity and creative direction. Even if you're creating something objectively really good, they'll criticize it and ask you to revise it 100 times until the end product looks so poor you're ashamed to admit you designed it. The client is always right in this industry, even if their ideas are poorly realized. Then if people don't like it, you're to blame, even if you're powerless really. Sometimes when a new logo comes out or a movie poster or book cover and people disparage it, all I can think about is that the designer probably had some great pitches and drafts, but the end result is what the client wanted and pushed for. Story 20. This is a bit of an obscure one, but for me, the answer is working in Antarctica, specifically McMurdo. I spent 9 field seasons working on the ice as part of different research projects. In each of my deployments, I'd first pass through McMurdo Station before heading out to the deep field. I'd meet so many young people in McMurdo that all had the same story. They delayed or dropped out of college or quit their stable jobs for the opportunity to live and work in Antarctica. They all talked about how it would be this magical experience and had romantic visions of braving the elements like Shackletown. The truth is, though, that most of these young workers ended up living and working in McMurdo, often as janitors, cargo haulers, or in the mess hall. The work is terrible and they are basically stuck for 6 months in a stinky little diesel town. They watch all the scientists come through and head out to these exotic and remote places while they are stuck cleaning bathrooms in the McMurdo dorms. With that said, the work out at the field camps is not really any more glamorous. I would work 12-hour shifts in minus 40-degree temps, drilling and logging ice cores. I've had frostnip multiple times and nothing heals at those temperatures. It's incredibly exhausting work, and unless you are really passionate about science, it can be hard to stay motivated. Thankfully, I do love my work in glaciology, so my deployments have been rewarding, but the days are still incredibly hard. You're just always so cold. Story 21. Working in a library, specifically a public library. I wouldn't say it's miserable, I personally love it, but when I tell people I'm a librarian, they assume it's a very quiet, peaceful job where all I do is read books and shush people. In reality, it's much closer to social work. There is a small percentage of people who actually read, come in to browse, and like to talk books. Mostly it's unhoused and deeply impoverished folks who don't have access to the internet or computers. These people are usually completely tech illiterate or actually illiterate, unwell, and quite frankly, desperate. I do a lot of connecting people to inadequate resources in our community and teaching them how to do simple things like copy, paste, or download files. There aren't a lot of establishments that just let unhoused people exist. The library is often the only place for them to go during the day. While most of these folks are completely fine, nice people, there's a lot of chaos that can come with a building full of people with no social or familial safety net. Also, when you see completely unhinged comments that make you go, who would say or think something like that? It's probably an unhoused person with untreated mental illness who spends every day on a computer in a public library. Story 22. Journalist. At first, it's like, wow, you get to be on TV or have your name on a byline. You get to contribute to important issues and tell compelling stories. You get to travel and it sounds like fun. While all of those can still be true, it's also grueling work, long hours, and most of all, a very thankless job with terrible pay, if at all, especially when starting out. You can work hours to track down Muhammad Ali's lawyer, dig and sleuth around for his direct number for a quick 30-second segment. It would have taken you like 8 to 10 hours, and then it's just on to the next. That's it, all that work, no recognition, just, okay, what's next? You have to care a lot to be in the job. It's a grindy job with little to no pay, especially in the beginning. Most people I know ended up branching out to marketing or communications and make a ton more while doing much less work than staying in journalism would have ever gotten them. And if you're enjoying this video of stories so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 23. Sports show anchor. I dated a sports center anchor for a few years. He worked long hours, always watching over his shoulder for up-and-coming anchors who might compete for his slots. If you are not one of the top 5 personalities, it does not pay all that well. He used to scoff at the title of the dream job show that had someone win a spot as a sports center anchor. At the same time, it annoyed the darn out of him because he had put in his time at tiny little networks working his way up to a national spot. Story 24. Hands down, a florist. I come from a family of florists and I'm glad I got out. Forget the fact that it's a dying business. Being a florist is very dirty work. Every piece of clothing you wear to work is now stained. Your hands are always wet and or dirty and always stained from roses. Don't bother with manicures because it'll be ruined almost immediately. You get no holidays off as they are your busiest work days. You rarely even get a day off because someone passes away and your services are needed. People used to always say to me how awesome it must be to work with beautiful flowers all day. Nope, it was horrible. Story 25. Film worker. I spent 6 years in the industry. I joined when I was about 20. I worked as a grip and camera assistant. I had moved to Vancouver City in Canada and just networked my way in. The money was great, and I got to consume cannabis on the job since the friends I made were producers. At 20, consuming cannabis, getting paid big bucks to lift lights and set up sets felt amazing. I loved telling people I work in film and talking about all the cool sets I had been on. The job was fun. In the beginning, I'll be honest. Since my friends were producers, I only really worked on commercial sets. These sets are very much different than union sets. Commercials are less hours, 8 to 10 hours, and better pay than union. Since everyone is there by networking, you usually always work with people who are down to earth. Fast forward 3 years, the group I had initially joined had a falling out, and this was my segue into the union world. At the time, union was my dream, guaranteed hours, bigger sets, weekly pay, etc. Things began to change a year into the union world. I'd stopped working out or going out since I was now working 2 to 3 weeks straight with 10 to 13 hour days and maybe a day or two off in between. I slowly began to just work. No more friends, no more fitness, and I began to consume a lot more cannabis to cope with the workload. I also began to see patterns in the industry. Most people around me who told me to push for union harder were in terrible shape physically and mentally. Sure, they had a lot of money, but they all had sore backs, hip problems, and knee problems. Men had beer bellies from all the onset drinking. Women looked much older due to the high-stress environment. Film isn't for the faint of heart. Producers and directors were all consuming stimulants all the time. Literally everyone consumed grass. Substance misuse is very normalized in film. I also found myself having to be fake, pretend to like people who morally I disagreed with, since they could get me work. I began to abandon my values in the name of work. At 25, I got on a really big show and had a really bad experience. The producers were mistreating people and they threw me under the bus for one of their mistakes. After crying on the drive home, I finally looked at myself and I thought, what do I want? I want kids, I want a life, I want to work from home so my kids can see me. I want financial stability. Film didn't offer any of that. I decided to leave film. Now I tell people who ask me about film to just not do it. You're a tool for producers. They'll chew you out until you're nothing and leave you in the dust. You'll never truly have stability and your body will hate you. Now I work remote and make the same money and I have my life back. I don't regret a thing. I'm much happier now. Now for those curious, the biggest show I got to work on wasn't the cruel one, was The Last of Us Season 2. Story 26. Mail carrier. Honestly, I loved it, but mandatory holidays, never knowing if you're getting your full weekend, unscheduled mandatory overtime, having to negotiate and justify your timing every day, and the general archaic management style made it pretty miserable. I could be walking 12 miles on an 8-hour day or randomly 20 miles with 4 hours mandatory overtime. You just never know what you're walking into. It could be the perfect job and maybe it was at one time, but it's not now. Story 27. Not necessarily miserable because it can be enjoyable if you have patience and energy, but being a scriptwriter is tough. You literally start from scratch every time and the feedback from producers can be brutal. There are days when nothing comes out of you emotionally, but you still have a deadline. It's mental suffering. I'm talking about the Philippine context, by the way. I don't know how it is in other countries, but here, where most shows aren't canned, but they're already shooting while the scripts are still being written, it's draining. Story 28. Penetration tester. You very rarely get to roll into a bank like Robert Redford in Sneakers. You basically run the same scripts over and over, then you write the same report over and over. Here's all your outdated software. You need to inventory your hardware, implement MFA, etc. And since it's mostly consulting, that means you're constantly jumping from client to client, report to report, dog to make as many billable hours as possible, often with lots of travel since part of the scans need to take place on site. I've been pivoting into blue team defensive work, but it's hard because the tools used in the enterprise are not easily mirrored in a home lab, and no one wants to hire you until you have experience with a given tool. Story 29. I was super excited about getting into the news business, journalism. I do tend to idolize really great reporters. I don't like gotcha journalism, but I also know it's needed on some issues. I hate the way so many news programs are written and produced, pure tugging at emotions, pure hook into fake controversies, pure sales pitches for stuff disguised as news stories. Every new local restaurant story in your local news is a sales pitch disguised as news. The CNN webpage is fully 2/3 ads for items to buy. Got into college to study it and found out it's a very lonely profession. Where is the collaboration? Where are the morning meetings to discuss what is going to lead that day? Who is working on what, or that show or that issue? Where are the reporter partnerships in which everyone else is as happy to be working on the story as you are? None of those existed in real life in college, and I have an angry rebel in me who really wants to go report on and expose, if needed, the powerful and well-connected. Any of those students in college? Nope, most of them were there because they like to write or they like to work with graphics and design software on the computer. No one really wanted to go after the man. Going after the man is an old term left over from 1960s hippies who were trying to stop the Vietnam War and racism. Indeed, most of my young peers did not know the man exists, but he does. He does. The Epstein story is a perfect example of the man existing in America and pulling the strings of politics and the economy. He gets away with most of his crimes and becomes a multimillionaire, and we're all poor slobs. Then I got a job in a real, live small-town newsroom. Perhaps here people will collaborate and look for significant stories? Nope. Mostly it was just single men worried about their love lives with the married men who were very worried about keeping their jobs and their ratings high. Whatever they had to do to improve our ratings at this local TV station, that is what they did. They didn't want to investigate anyone lest we upset the Republicans in the region. If they're a Democrat, Democrats are more forgiving, so yeah, they could go after the Dems a little bit. It was a news organization that actively avoided controversies and featured local businesses as news stories often. Why? To sell, so people will shop local and so the businesses might buy commercial time at the station. I think it's unethical for colleges not to teach in the very first class, first semester, that this is really how the news business works. The news is the buddy and the pal of businesses and politicians, not the uninfluenced fourth estate that seeks to hold them accountable. Because the minute you accept money from a business to run its ads, you are compromised as a news organization, in my opinion. The same goes for politicians. Anyway, ethically, every college needs to teach this reality of the news business in the first semester, so everyone will know the truth and can change majors quickly if they think they will actually be able to hold anyone accountable by becoming a journalist. The biggest disappointments of the job, the two biggest, was the sexism/ageism and the lack of collaboration. Story 30. Working on anything related to commerce for very rich people in my country, I'm gonna share a bit. Rarely will a really rich person treat you politely like they do in front of others. If you are a woman, you're gaining work experience and you are very young, there is always a disgusting old man who will not respect you and will want to use money to try to do something inappropriate to you. Over time, you realize who comes from a humble place and relates to a very rich person, and who has always been rich. By the way, they behave if they are frequent customers. I will not elaborate on this paragraph further. You have to keep a character happy all the time. Many like to feel like you were their employee when buying something. You have to do everything to treat them like nobility. Spoiler, many of them won't respect you. This is part of working for rich people. And the minority thanks you and gives you some tip. Story 31. I work in study abroad and everyone thinks it is nothing but fun, exciting travel. Do you know what it's like to have your ability to sleep a whole night be determined by a 19-year-old in Europe not doing some dumb stuff? Now multiply that by several hundred 19 to 24-year-olds. Yes, I travel sometimes for work, but it is work, not vacation like everyone thinks. It's also one of the most underpaid sectors of higher education, not surprising because it's a field made up overwhelmingly of women. It's a field that often takes advantage of people who really want to help students expand their knowledge and worldview by constantly echoing how important the work is, but not paying people for their labor. It's not out of the ordinary for physicians to pay in the $40,000 range for jobs where they are requesting a master's degree. Story 32. Software developer/programmer/analyst. The job can be so much fun, it's fast-paced and you're always learning, but no company ever factors in enough time for the inevitable bug fixes we get every day. And they always have such tight deadlines for projects that always end up with bugs, so there are very long hours. Companies pay lip service to Q&A and testing, but it's like pulling teeth to get business users for UAT. and I am the only automation engineer in QA, and I'm always behind because of all the stuff that comes up during the day that management has no clue about. Testing emergency fixes, fixing test automation code that broke because some ID elements got changed and now the tests are broken, helping the rest of the QA team with technical requests and random database things that needs to be done when the DBA isn't available. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my job, it keeps my brain sharp, but I am exhausted and burnt out. I spend most of my little free time at the gym because my health will deteriorate if I don't stay active and strong. I use PTO and time off to rest and do the stuff I want to do but don't have time for. And don't fall for the trap of unlimited PTO. We had guaranteed PTO up until 2020. Unlimited PTO sounds great, but you end up taking off way less time than with a fixed PTO amount. I'm lucky to have a boss that encourages us to take off at least a week every quarter and taking extra days around the holidays. But there are teams that pride themselves on taking off as little as possible. This year has been so busy that my first bit of time off was in May, and I won't have any more time off until December 1st for my next staycation. Story 33. Being middle management. I guess I should qualify. Being decent middle management. I have a team that I need to keep engaged doing work that can be tedious while they're simultaneously working on initiatives from upper management. You have your day-to-day and everyone demands your time from above and below. You'll get roped into meetings on behalf of your boss who doesn't want to go or need you there as a subject matter expert. Meanwhile, someone in your team is out and you're trying to meet all your deadlines while getting their work covered. On top of that, you have to be able to balance the line between expectations from upper management and what your team is capable of managing without getting burned out or quitting. If the work isn't getting done, you'll take the blame. I'm lucky in the fact I have a good team, but the trust is something you have to earn. It's a balancing act. Story 34. Programming? No, it's not all spending 7 out of 8 hours a day having free coffee, smoothies, and snacks at the office or sitting with a laptop on the beach drinking a cocktail. Despite what all those I work at Google influencers want you to believe, most of my time is spent dealing with stupid people on the business side of things who either don't know what they want me to do or are trying to sabotage my work because they don't want to learn how to use new software we are working on for them. Dealing with colleagues who don't give a damn about the work, so they produce code which barely passes all approvals. Trying to understand, fix, add new features to the code written by someone who doesn't know anything about programming but somehow managed to write a piece of software which handles financial transactions worth millions of dollars every day. Constantly fighting tooth and nail with everyone in my life, both at work and outside of it. Trying to tell people that no, putting AI into everything is not a great idea. And no, LLMs are not AGI and will never be. It's just a fancy autocomplete and no more smart than T9 I've had on my phone 20 years ago. Sometimes spending days and weeks trying to understand what triggers a specific bug. You sit for hours staring at the application executing its code line by line, checking the value of every single variable. I am expected to learn continuously until the end of my days or I will become irrelevant in the industry. Now, don't get me wrong, it's far from being the worst job. There are a lot of benefits like work from home and a flexible work schedule, but most people don't realize that a programmer's brain is exhausted by the end of the workday, and you're expected to be refreshed and ready to do the same amount of work by the next morning. Story 35. I'm a direct support professional for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Some people think they're all sweet, innocent adult children who are always pleasant and cooperative and that I spend all day coloring and playing games with them. Lol. Nope. People with IDDs can be just as mean and nasty as the general public, and a lot of them don't have the cognitive capacity to handle negative emotions with grace, so DSPs just have to be okay with potentially getting assaulted, screamed at, called slurs, getting their stuff destroyed, etc. And even when the clients are pleasant, it's still not a glamorous job. Like 90% of what I do is cleaning, and I've cleaned up so much feces. Feces on the walls, feces run through the dryer and baked onto the inside of it. Super fun stuff. Story 36. Working in the music industry. Very rare to find a full-time gig with benefits, so you usually have to work multiple jobs, always working nights and weekends, having to travel or tour for work so you never get time with family or friends, or have the ability to build new relationships. It's very competitive and oversaturated, pay isn't great, dealing with rude bands, crew, tour managers, and if you're patron-facing, it's so exhausting. The public is so entitled, rude, and just plain stupid. The best part about it is I get to watch people have the time of their lives. Story 37. I was a marine mammal trainer and a zookeeper for a while, playing with animals all day, right? Nope. The water is super cold, the people are really full of themselves, and there is a lot of drama and hazing and backstabbing. You're outside in all weather, work all holidays and weekends, miss major family events. You make zero money because you only do that work because you love and care for the animals, and any time I wanted time off, I was guilted for not being more dedicated. Also, you get a lot of hate from the anti-zoo crowd, but it's not like you're the one who put the animals in the zoo. You're just trying your best to do right by them and provide the best care possible because you can't change their circumstances. Story 38. A lot of private pay rehab therapists, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists don't get paid unless they have a patient in front of them. All emails and calls to teachers, doctors, parents, creating home exercise programs, documentation, setting up or creating materials, researching treatment methods, and coordinating care with other therapists is all unpaid time. They're also required to take continuing education courses to maintain their licenses, and a lot of times, employers don't reimburse fully or at all for those or cover the cost for employees to renew their licenses. Then you have all the emotional labor and mental load of helping all your patients and their caregivers, which is easier to manage if you don't have your own people you need to care for. Story 39. Being a chef and confusing that with just being a line cook, by the way. Both include extremely demanding work, including hot and cold environments, dangerous equipment, sharp objects, knives included, extreme attention to detail, constant mindfulness of the clock since we need it for timing everything, and anywhere from 10 to 14 or more hours a day, all while typically being one of the more underpaid areas in hospitality. Being a chef also entails managing people and their personalities and challenges. It involves handling product coming in and going out at the kitchen, the schedule. My current roster has 60 employees, complete with reviews and discipline when necessary. It requires understanding of kitchen and restaurant business financials so that your food and labor costs are in line and above board, while all being able to be creative and write menus and recipes to exacting specifications so that duplication, regardless of the employee, becomes easier. Story 40. The film industry. A standard day is 10-12 hours long, not counting lunch. But 14 or more hours is not uncommon. The longest day I've personally done, 20. It was actually multiple 20-hour days in a row. There are times you work those hours, 6 or even 7 days a week, if the production can afford the overtime. I've heard of people working 20 or more days in a row without a day off. I've worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for several months straight. A lot of people in this industry lose their lives or have life-altering injuries because they fall asleep at the wheel from sheer exhaustion. Your reputation is everything when it comes to getting work, so you have to decide what you will or will not let slide. They are supposed to stop for meal breaks every 6 hours, but it's not uncommon for them to go longer than that. If you're a woman, person of color, or another marginalized group, it's that much harder to stand up for yourself and not be punished for it. If you are working a union job, you can't get compensated for these things, but they still happen very regularly. In the world of non-union, many of these penalties aren't guaranteed and you will burn a bridge by properly charging them. HR in the non-union world is basically who you are personally willing to take to court and how much you want to risk your reputation you're willing to take on to do it. If you try to improve work-life balance, there are many people, fellow crew members, not just employers, who will brand you as lazy and lacking work ethic. There are people who want to give you opportunities by having you work for them for free. It's a meat grinder of a business with a facade of Hollywood glamour. Now, don't get me wrong, there are decent producers who try their best to be good to the crew. There are many times I love my job and I form many wonderful friendships with the people I work with. Getting on the right gig with good people feels like cheating a system or winning the job lottery. I have to believe there's a way to make TV and film that doesn't come at the expense of the workers. I question if we have the collective will to fight for it. Story 41. Interior designer. Majority of designers are narcissistic egomaniacs who have good taste and delegate the actual work to their employees. Many of them, small and large designers, have no idea how long tasks actually take and overwork their employees while paying them zero overtime. A big California designer told my friend, "You should be thankful that you're allowed to work for me," when she brought up how many hours she had been working, 12 16-hour days. And if any of these stories got to YouTube, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.